So we've made nearly to the end. Before we're going to regale you with food and cocktails, but before then we have some more content and time we'd like to get through, as we have this great panel of some senior level logistics executives here in Russia to talk about some of their strategies and challenges for the future. A couple of last points before we kick off. We like to repeat ourselves here at Automotive Logistics, but the evaluation forms that have been on your table and are still in front of you, we are going to collect these at the end of the session. As Louis mentioned, we do have a prize draw. The Queen's favorite biscuits, if it means anything to you. We really want your feedback on this, about the content, about the organization, about the team. You can rank Louis or me about which moderator you like better, which haircut you like better, whatever you want. And we take this into consideration for future conferences. So give us your feedback, we really appreciate it. Also another point, as you know, you've had translation headsets because we can be in English or in Russian on stage. Please, after this session, immediately return your headsets to the table outside. Unfortunately, they're not going to work at the gala dinner if you want to continue speaking English or Russian to someone who doesn't understand you. So we'll need them back at the end of the session. I hope you've enjoyed what we've had so far today. I think we've covered quite a lot in a short time. We've traveled a bit into the future to see what demand and regulations are going to look like. We've looked back on the past and see what we've come from. As we talked about earlier, or those of you kind of hoping to get quickly back to the 2008 or 2012 peaks, probably or possibly might have to be patient. But we do see some roads to recovery. We do see, or our experts do see, this year as the bottom of the market, and this might be indeed the time to start planning for some recovery. As Elena from Adenpol suggested, this may well be a good time to consider investments. Not everyone will agree. This will probably be dependent on every company individually, and it's probably a matter to discuss closely with your partners, whether your customers, your suppliers, your providers, to plan effectively. Because as you all know, things can change very fast in Russia, so we do need this industry to be prepared, regardless of which direction the market is going. We've also talked about localization, the importance of increasing localization here in Russia. That could be various parts of the supply base, whether it's vehicle sourcing, whether it's improving your logistics networks, and I'm sure we'll touch more on that with some of our speakers now. I was speaking earlier as well with another executive, and one of the things that perhaps gets overlooked sometimes in a crisis or in a downturn is that the status quo can very rarely hold. So there's usually an opportunity for change, an opportunity to challenge ideas and do something different. So perhaps this is also important to remember that as we hopefully start moving towards recovery and be open to innovation, whether it's in equipment or whether it's in providers or new concepts. So I think that kind of sets our platform. We're going to mainly have a Q&A here with Louis and I leading it, and of course help from you, but we are going to actually also have a few slides to start off from Ford Sullers. But let me introduce our panel for you, starting from your left. It's Igor Nesterov from WABCO. So very pleased to have a tier supplier representative, but Igor also has significant background at a number of companies here in Russia, including car makers and other types of suppliers. So we really appreciate and value his input. Someone that many of you may recognize here, perhaps from different companies, that's Alexey Tenkov, who has recently rejoined Avtovaz. Of course, had been working with GM, but I believe Avtovaz before that as well. So again, a long and important background here and a lot of expertise. And who's going to actually come up to the podium shortly now? Sergey Bannov from Ford Sullers. Of course, a very important joint venture company here in Russia. So before we move to our Q&A discussion, I'd like to invite our speaker from Ford Sullers to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me well? I was should I do to switch the slides on? It's not a real long presentation, just literally a few slides. And as I work for Ford Solars, this will be mainly dedicated to things related to vehicle manufacturers. But I believe some of the points would probably be also interesting or even useful for logistics companies as well. And I would like to talk about a few things, those we probably didn't touch enough in my understanding in the previous sessions. If you go back like 10 years ago and look at the forecast for Russian industry, automotive industry development, you would see a chart which slowly goes up. And then in 2008, 2009, it suddenly dropped down. If you look at the forecast which existed at that same time in 2009, 2010, or 2012, you would see a forecast of industry slowly going up, the same. And then it fell down in 2014. Also, if you come back to earlier times, it would also show slow going up. But in fact, in the lucky period after 2000, between 2000 and 2007, it went up much faster than forecasted. So every time we look at a forecast, it can never be accurate. Even if the trend is forecasted correctly, the real life will always be different. And currently, everybody is thinking about strategy in Russia based on where Russia is going to be in 2020, 25, and 2030. And people are making decisions, not just strategical decisions, but also decisions for close life based on those assumptions. I think what we should do differently, all of us, is we should all consider the real life in the shape it currently develops. And when most people think of the current market in Russia as a very low market position, 1.4, 1.5 million cars per year, people think, okay, we are in the slow mode, we are waiting for better times, and we need to survive, we need to develop our strategy. We might quit, or we will wait and see how the market will go up again, and then we will earn money. I think this is a very questionable approach. I think that, firstly, we need to understand what our strategy should be for 2016, not for 2030. 2030 is important, but we are living now. And some of the companies will not survive until 2030. Therefore, I would probably call the current conditions, if I try to describe them in 3 words, not as the low market period in Russia, but I would call it a volatile market, weakened by volatile national currency. And these 2 factors are the main ones, those, in my opinion, define priorities in the strategy for the nearest future. And priorities should be flexibility, because if the market is flexible, you should be flexible. And cost efficiency. If your dollar or euro costs might jump up or down every month, or even every day, you should be very cost effective to be able to still operate profitable under the changed conditions. And most of you probably think that there's nothing new in this. Everybody could say that cost is what we've been fighting for all our lives. This is what we've been doing anyway. Flexibility as well. We are trying to improve our reaction time to market or to costs or to anything else. But let me tell you some of the new things we implemented in our company different versus what we've been doing before. And flexibility in the area of logistics is related to, very much is related to program changes. Before, I would always, talking to sales, I would always protect a stable schedule. Because I have my long lead times from suppliers, I would like to keep minimum inventory. And even though I would love to satisfy all the clients and provide very good service to sales and marketing organization, I would try to keep the schedule stable. Currently, we have changed, and we are doing some of the things that we never did before, changing production schedule in a very near time. So we operate within existing capacity, but we also change capacity. We change the number of working shifts in the plants, the number of people, and production rates changes more often than it did ever before. Also, when you change your production rate, you should always try to see what effectiveness or what kind of losses you can avoid in the area of logistics. Once you have a set up transportation network, people used to keep it more or less as it is and only find little opportunities in all the areas. With the level of changes those we have now with the market and with production volume, you have to be able to revise everything at any point in time. You need to adjust shipping frequency, your packaging strategies, your complexity every time you make changes to your volume. And changes to the volume are not just related to a drop of a market. Because if you have more than one model in your portfolio, which is, I think, true for everyone, even if the total market goes down, there are always individual models. Those go up. And in some of the cases, you have to increase production, and then you have to intensify your logistics flows on some routes. And the main idea about cost, what is new now versus what we've been doing before? You should start thinking different. I put several things of how to do that. And the first one I called don't deny opportunities. Very often, brilliant ideas in organization appear from the very bottom levels. And people with very little experience, and some may call them unexperienced people, but I would call them people with fresh eyes. Sometimes they propose ideas. Those are very, very new in the organization. They were believed to be wrong and stupid, maybe even stupid before. But in the new conditions, some of those things work. For example, several years ago, we had a route from Canada through US, then back to Canada, to Montreal port, and then to Northern Europe. And we identified those spots, those who were going this strange route, and we shortened the way and launched direct flow from Canadian suppliers to Montreal and then to Northern Europe. But recently, we changed that back. And this sounds illogical to bring some materials from Canada to US, then back to Canada. But there is another customer which uses the same components in Chicago. And it was cheaper to deliver the big flow to that big customer from Canada to US, and then pick those parts up there, together with another big flow which goes from Chicago to Canada and then to Northern Europe. So with the change, before it was better to use the direct flow, but with the changed volume, we had to make a solution which looked illogical, but finally it proved that it was the most cost-effective one. Also, tried to think cross-functionally. We had a lot of cost reduction this year in areas in the middle between logistics and purchasing, such as packaging price reduction. You would not look at price, being a logistics specialist, you would not look at the price of packaging, which is part of piece price normally. And purchasing, before they wouldn't possess enough knowledge to make good and professional estimation of pack prices before. And only working together, we managed to revise prices for a lot of parts. And it made a lot of savings without any investments and with just sitting at the table, talking to supplier, gathering information and negotiations. And now I will probably repeat myself, question everything. Everything which you set up before, don't let it be unchanged. Don't let it flow through into 2017 evolutionally without revision. Question all the decisions you did before, and you will probably find opportunities for savings where the condition has changed. This is an example, and I would talk probably about the third one, which also goes a little bit against logic. You would normally try to implement durable packaging where possible. And if you have expendable packaging somewhere, you would try to find the business case to turn it into durable, to reduce piece prices, to reduce waste, to improve your logistics, packaging density probably. But when the volume goes down, and for some of the models here, the volume just went down, actually sometimes there is a business case to go from durable into expendable. And this one probably correlates to what we have spoken about before. In the volatile market, when you are not 100% sure about 2017 and beyond, trying to implement projects, those need zero investments. Try to focus your efforts on the short-term things. Those have very little payback time. And obviously, when you need zero investments, payback is almost immediate, like in those cases where we just revised the packaging prices. Localization became more important. Export we spoke about. And look at the soft savings. Try looking at inventory reduction. Because it's another area where you probably not need to invest anything. Try to improve the transportation network, but also look at internal logistics. Internal logistics is the area where you can change the principles of working and find opportunities for inventory reduction. And I would like to finish my emotional speech with the most important thing. You need to keep people those work for you involved and motivated. I know some companies have to, and ours as well, had to reduce headcount, and the operations go down. People you stay with should still feel importance of what they are doing. And it's extremely important for you to deliver the right message to everyone. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Sergey. I think that's a great start to our discussion here. And I think the message of sort of think differently and don't accept the status quo or necessarily the received ideas is an important one, whether it might seem logical at first or not, right, to be open to everything. Maybe we can sort of take that point to some of our other panelists, Igor, Alexey. Is there anything in this crisis, or however we're describing it, in this period, which you've changed in your company, in your supply chain, in a reaction to whether it was to save costs in a way that was unexpected, sort of the new innovation you've brought in? Or is there anything that you would kind of point to at your companies respectively?
Окей. Начну я по-русски.
I will start, and I will start in Russian. In fact, first and foremost, I want to thank Louis for organizing one of the best conferences dedicated to automotive. Once again, we have lots of conferences dedicated to logistics, but automotive logistics is a rare happening. So I take part in these conferences starting from 2009, plus the great positive impact of this conference is that we can focus on automotive. Going back to 2009, I must say that we gather practically the same people every year, or we see the familiar places. We all know the principles and the geographical principles of our work in terms of plants, in terms of logistics, nothing difficult, only if you have a logical approach. What we've heard in the presentation now and in the course of the roundtables, we discussed the main issues of what's to be done, how to act in the times of crisis. Starting from 2009, we're discussing similar topics for the third time, I think, how to survive in this situation. And also the advantage is that when from time to time we have such topics, our logistics must be next to ideal. With such a lot of different changes and challenges, there should be not just a theory, but a real practice, a workable practice. All the methods in terms of logistics efficiency have to be applied with the greatest effort in the time of crisis, but they have to be working all the time. And the task of logistics is to be on a constant improval scale in terms of costs. From the point of view of the manufacturer, logistics is one of the most costly components of their business. And everybody is expecting logistics to be improved on a constant basis. I think we've now listened to a very good presentation that actually summed up all the issues. And these are the issues that we have to think about all the time. And thus, we have to be prepared to such crisis situations, looking proactively at different things, looking at what is not optimal in your business, what has to be improved, changed, or corrected. If in the previous years we had a situation when we could work with tariffs to a certain degree, now, to my opinion, the tariff system between the manufacturer and the service providers, is at such a complicated level. When we are discussing, as during today's roundtables, we're discussing how to preserve the companies for them not to be closed. And look at those who take part in these conferences on a yearly basis. You see that the circle of our participants, unfortunately, is diminishing. And I do not think that it is not only because some people lack time, but mainly because those companies survive that are looking constantly into the future, not only at the present. And hence, we cannot think only about the tariff component. We have to look at the efficiency, at the engineering, at how to change processes on a constant basis, because each and every company has its own specifics. but the logistics principles of that will be the same. And both on the side of the manufacturer and on the side of the carriers, we have to share our experiences. I have mentioned at the round table that now we can't set up our work on the principle of a one-way movement. The service provider has to take part in the real process of the manufacturer and sometimes maybe even hint to the manufacturer what has to be corrected. As for GM and Avtovaz, I may speak about these companies because I have experience. In these companies, what was the main thing? For example, with Avtovaz, the volumes are big, but the efficiency has to be improved. We know which efficiency and how, but at that, it should be a two-way work, because if we speak about transport, it has to be a good, reliable transport with qualified drivers, qualified personnel, and well-managed systems, and all this has to be done not at the time of crisis, but before. Everything has to be prepared in advance. Some people are afraid for the stability of the future. Some people are trying to save their funds. The other companies want to invest into the ideal logistic process. So my opinion is that the situation of today is probably really a crisis, but it doesn't differ much from the previous crisis. The main thing is that we have to carry out this work not only like a lump work at the time of crisis, but it has to be carried out on a constant basis. If we speak about inbound logistics, many things are connected here with packaging, how effectively we load our transport. This is connected with transportation flows, how well the transportation company fits into the concept that is workable for the specific manufacturer. It is also connected with the turnaround of the transport that will lead to the decreasing of costs. And the manufacturers have to communicate with all the market participants in order to acquire best practices that are used in different companies. And that's what we're trying to stick to. There's a lot of work to be done. We're discussing how to improve on an everyday basis, how to survive in these difficult times, what's to be changed. But many issues had to be changed already, in fact. And at our future meetings, we have to discuss specific actions that are needed for these critical times. Unfortunately, we do speculate a lot, but when it comes down to practice, the situation is different. Either one person is not ready, one company, or the other. So once again, we as logistics providers are ready for this. We all know how the market is operating. We know what's to be improved. And the work has to be based and built on a constant mode, not just from time to time. But there has also to be a certain level of openness and information sharing and exchange. That's probably the main thing.
Добрый день еще раз, коллеги.
Once again, good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to introduce myself once again for you to understand better what I'm going to speak about in the next few minutes. And I would like to speak about very specific issues. Very specific issues that either have happened or which will happen in the near future. So I'm working in the company, in an importing company That's why the questions that I want to ask and that concern me and that I want you to discuss with me are to deal mainly with the importers, not to such a degree as logistics providers or car manufacturers. So I want to change gears a bit and structure the discussion as follows. I have some specific issues I want to discuss, and I would like to hear your opinion, your experience, just very briefly in a few words.
Вопросы, которые, пользуясь своим служебным положением,
I'm using my position as a speaker. I want to hear your experience, maybe learn from you, and maybe answer some of your questions if I can. If you do not oppose, let's start. So the first question I suggest for discussion, who knows anything or who can tell us about the future environmental? Do you know anything about this environmental collision? Good. Maybe not very good, but it will help me a lot. And maybe in the future you as well, because it is clear that this topic is not known to you. So it will be a small environmental charge. So I'm going to deliver a small presentation or tell you about it. It is going to be a new charge, the environmental charge, since we're all using cardboard and wooden packaging. We, in the near future, are going to pay this environmental fee for cardboard and timber. If we won't prove to the government that we'll utilize ourselves all these materials. After you ship a small cardboard box from Moscow to Vladivostok, you have to commit to utilization of this box afterwards. Since no one of you responded to my question, this is it is practically unknown to you yet. The information is really very new, and though the law has been adopted, but the order of its implementation hasn't been set up. So that was my question number one. Question number two, which was already raised during the previous session. It was mentioned by Evgeny, and it's to concern our relations with Turkey and the import of Turkish products. I hope you know about this, dear colleagues. Who can tell me anything about this? How are you working with this? What are you doing? Do you refuse to have Turkish goods at all, or do you ship inventory for a whole year and then send them over to a special customs point? How do you manage? Can you share your experience? Or do you have good customs brokers? Thank you, Misha. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Mikhail Gushinsky. I come from Sinachiveka company. We've worked with Igor before, and I can give you an example. We have a segment of agricultural tractors, which Sinich company produces in Turkey. At the end of the last year, when the relations between our countries worsened, we had a small lot of tractors in Novorossiysk that was waiting for customs clearance. The customs officials tried to delay the process artificially as much as possible. We have undergone the full examination with taking out the inspections. Then there was a commission of customs officers and the importers' representatives, at which we were not, somehow informed that it will be impossible for us to bring Turkish goods to Russia any longer. So we sent this lot of tractors back to Turkey. This year there was an attempt to try bring the tractors once again via St. Petersburg, but there were some different problems with certification, and now in accordance with technical regulation, it is more difficult now to receive the certification. So the Turkish for our company for quite a long time, I think. Technical schedule is a good word. We discussed at our session this issue, but it was quite not in a great detail. Different companies have their own solutions. First and foremost, we have to work with a customs broker. We're working with a customs broker. Ford is working with a customs broker. The solutions are different. Moreover, mainly all of us here come from Russia. We know how difficult it is to work with the customs. Each head of the customs point may have his or her own opinion how things should work. We all understand this. So the customs broker has to be as active as possible and try to find ways out. I'm not calling anybody to work in accordance with gray schemes. Everything has to be as white as possible. I've already promised to my colleagues from to try resolve this. We had some serious problems. We stopped the delivery of parts from Turkey for 3 or 4 months. But after the new year, we resumed this. There were some explanations for customs points and to the automotive industry. And we were allowed to import Turkish parts and components quite legally, absolutely white. I can go back to these documents and tell you in more detail how this worked. Good.
So Yaroslav from Alfa Usluga. So I have to tell you that when it comes to Turkish companies, I don't think that so-called normal brokers had any problems with that. I think the problems only occur with a list of goods that are under sanctions. So I think all of the problems were with the goods that were sanctioned, especially foodstuffs. Yeah, I understand, Yaroslav, but I think here we're either talking about auto parts and spare components. I don't think that there are problems right now at this stage. Well, then how do we understand this situation when at first they limited basically the import of Turkish goods? They introduced 100% customs inspections, and then they even designated specialized customs outposts for customs clearance of goods from Turkey. Well, as you know, our customs, they have many ways to basically deny the access of Russian consumers to goods from certain countries of certain origin. So they create this additional risks, but we have to understand that it should be a bilateral cooperation between the client and the broker. So let me be honest by saying that a lot of the clients do not understand that the more information a broker has, for instance, if for instance you if you have photo, video documents of how the container is loading, and if you is loaded, and if you provide all of this information at the customs, then basically you drive the risks down to zero. You can even X-ray a container. I have to say that customs, they make zero money on inspections, apart from, well, you know. So for customs workers, it is easier to X-ray a container and to see that the photographic evidence and the video evidence that you submitted is adequate. So basically, they can just see it on your mobile phone, and they can basically make a decision not to follow up with a thorough inspection and just X-ray your container. Then they will understand that the parts are stored where they are on the picture that you provided. Your partners have, the more opportunities and possibilities they will basically have to settle all of the possible issues with the customs, even when it comes to certain countries. So basically what you're trying to say, well, I heard an interesting point in what you said. You said that customs can take basically photographic and video evidence of of container loading at the shipment site. Well, I'm not so sure. Well, yeah, but when you do work with the customs, you work with people, so it's 100% basically human factor. This is 100% human factor. You're working with real people, and some people are better at it, and some people not so much. Some people, you know, send, I don't know, girls in low-cut dresses to talk to customs officers, and some sends, you know, grumpy old men who cannot reach an agreement with an inspector, as you can understand. Then, of course, there are different risks that you might face. So sometimes they can say, you know, let's do it. And sometimes they will say, I don't like you. I remember you stepped on my foot 2 months ago. So you see, it's 100% basically people relations. Well, I have a different issue. What I'm trying to ask so that we can submit photographic and video evidence to the customs and they will accept them. Well, no, it's not a legislative norm. It's not government regulations. Basically, common sense. There are also people who work there and they understand. Well, let me just illustrate my points. Well, my wife basically is a graduate of the Customs Academy, and she became a customs broker. She worked 2 weeks at the customs, and she had enough. Let's take Ust-Luga. So you go somewhere to some whoop-whoop. There is basically a room with no windows. It's 12 square feet. There are 8 people in this tiny closet. In the evening, when you are done with your shift, you come outside, it's pitch black, there's nobody around, and they get 13,000 rubles as their monthly salary. Well, I'm not going to cry about that. Well, no, there's no reason to cry, you know, this is, you know, government salary, but basically, so that you understand, you know, for a customs inspector to go through a thorough inspection of your container with full unloading, this is not something that they would choose. For them, it's easier to look at your evidence, and for them, it's easier to release your container if they have evidence. Yeah, Yaroslav, I see what you're talking about. So it can also be used as an option. So let me just tell you, so back in the day, let's say, a manager of a customs post used to be responsible for everything, and a customs inspector had a prerogative to resolve a lot of issues. Well, today we're dealing with a different situation. So basically, today we're dealing with a more authoritative sort of top-down structure. And if you are a company which never had a lot of issues with customs inspection, that probably 90%, you have a 90% chance that if you supply all of the documents photographic evidence videos, so they will release your container just after an X-ray. I think it's quite commendable. It's great. Maybe colleagues, anyone else would like to share something about Turkish goods?
My name is Alfred Ford Motor Company. I'm responsible for the spare parts operation here in Russia and also for 3 other depots in Europe. Normally I go in November on vacation and I come back on the Monday, first trip to Moscow, and Tuesday morning I got the information from our customs broker where the Turkish measure starts. So I know exactly the date. And since 8 months I'm involved in this. And I spend a hell of time and efforts to find a way, the right way, how to overcome. And I did this together with my customs broker, which is the main sponsor today, WABCO. It was a harmful process to do this, but we did this in line to the Ford compliance policy, because Ford has a compliance policy being noted at the New York Exchange. We do exactly what we ask for. It's harmful. We do huge parts descriptions of every single part. We do pictures. We provide pictures of the parts, the pictures of the packaging. We are checking twice the country of origin, because sometimes in our system we have an issue that the country of origin, because of changes of the supplier, because we have global suppliers delivering from that plant to another plant, have also then different setups. So sometimes it is Turkey, it's not Turkey. We are all checking this. Yes, in the first 3 months, I think up to February, we were not able, like Evgeny, my colleague from General Motors, and we are working very close together here because we are not competitors in the after-sales business. 3 months we were not able to deliver Turkish parts into Russia. And we have a lot of, as you know, Ford Motor Company is producing Kocaeli and Turkey with Transit and the Tornado, all of that, what we also have here as a big market car here in Moscow. So we need a lot of, in Russia, we need a lot of Turkish parts. We have about 15,000 Turkish parts, which we have to deal with on ongoing demand. And we did all this, what I had worked out in daily context with our customs broker in preparation of all the evidence. And from February onwards, we were in a position to provide all the informations which are required. We also changed the customs post, because there's one customs post who has a different viewpoint than other customs posts. Some of them have not the intention to import the material. Other customs posts have the intention to import the material to support us, so that the customs officials are not my enemies. They have to do their job, and they have to follow the regulations of Russia. There's no doubt about this. So then from 1st of April, there was a new regulation that specific customs posts can do Turkish measure and others not. We have followed this regulation with our customs broker. Since 1st of April, we have a new customs post, and we are doing this. It takes time. We have to do exactly what Evgeny pointed out. The Turkish parts, we load in the rear of the truck, because they get unloaded. The other material with country of origin, not Turkey, can go, and they measure it, and they take samples if they want. And if they don't want to take samples, their decision is a random decision. And after some time, it has been in the meantime reduced, because we get more familiar with our processes, we get more familiar with their process. So we get now our trucks, our Turkish material released within 3 and 5 days. We consider that in our inventory calculation, our forecast. Therefore, it works. It's harmful, but it works. And that is how we are overcoming this issue. And we hope now, since 2 days ago, we were very happy to see that our Prime Minister of Turkey apologized to Mr. Putin. And we hope that very soon there comes a different regulation. We keep fingers crossed on that. We also keep fingers crossed that the EU embargo gets deleted. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You want to speak in
Давайте, раз Альфред начал говорить.
So Alfred started talking about Ford, so let me just, add my 2 cents so that we have a full picture. So basically, he is bringing parts to dealers. So we also have another flow of components for production, and we also have finished cars that we're bringing in from Turkey. So, of course, when it comes to parts with dealerships, the situation is starting to get better after several months of struggle. Once he started taking pictures, when he started doing little dances for customs officers and so on and so forth. But when it comes to the other 2 flows, say we have 8 transits from Turkey to St. Petersburg. They were sitting there in the port, and we couldn't really get customs clearance until their storage time expired, so we had to return the goods back. And when it comes to production components, components for automotive production, as it was previously said, there are no official limitations apart from certain types of sanctioned goods, such as oranges and so on. But automotive components, just like other components, when it all started at the end of November, they were not being let into Russia without any official decree, but just maybe a hint from the government. So informally, they were not allowed into Russia, and this situation also resolved itself informally at the beginning of December. So we also have some importance, maybe not such big importance as Autovoz, but we do have some importance for the government. So unofficially, they stopped applying all of these various measures. So we did find ourselves in a pickle at first, but then the situation resolved itself at the beginning of December. So basically, customs clears at designated posts that were introduced. No, the same posts that we used beforehand. So they became the authorized customs post. Yes, exactly. So basically, life became better at the beginning of December when it comes to production components. Yeah, more or less. So, colleagues, anyone else?
Richard Campbell from CHEP Automotive. If I can come back to the first question regarding sustainability, I think it's a question that's very close to our heart, and thank you very much to Louis and Automotive Logistics for, we follow you around the world and talk about sustainability and the circular economy. Many of you might have been there, but certainly in Bonn this year, in the event in Germany, we made a keynote speech about sustainability and how much you as an individual working for your business are willing to choose profit over sustainability. And it's a key question to our circular economy debate as to, if you're introducing in Russia some taxes on one-way packaging or wooden packaging, I'd just like to remind everybody in the room, coming back to Sergey's point about thinking about now, there are many countries in the world that would be extremely proud of 1.4 million vehicle production. It's only just behind the UK, of which I'm a proud Briton. But the point I'm trying to make is that in the UK, the amount of vehicles produced, all of the factories in the UK use a sustainable solution for durable packaging. Many of them are supported by ourselves, I'm proud to say. So what I'd like to posit to the audience and make sure that people are thinking about it is come to ourselves or people like ourselves, our competitors in the industry and our peers, and really look to find ways to drive sustainable solutions into your supply chains. We already work with 3,000 suppliers across Europe and across the world. They're probably already the same customers or suppliers that you have in your supply chain. So to add one of your factories in Russia or multiple factories in Russia to their supply chain, it would make their lives often easier. So whether it's tier ones or tier twos, talking to myself and my colleagues gives the Russian automotive industry and also the industrial complex as well an opportunity to find ways to share. It's about sharing of information, sharing of knowledge, but our challenge is to help you move more with less. And I think it's a really key message to get across, which lines up with this idea of sustainability. How can you be sustainable but still make a profit? Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I
Спасибо.
just to kind of on that subject with Russian logistics is perhaps you've been in your position for a while. Alexey, you're kind of new to Avtovaz, but we've talked about flexibility and the future of automotive logistics in Russia. But I was wondering, perhaps for you, Alexey, when they brought you in, did they say to you, look, business is really tough. It's all about today. It's all about cost. How do you make everything really, really lean so we can survive? Or have they given you an opportunity to think ahead, say, look, you've got to be lean. That's almost a basic, as you said before. I don't know the last time anyone said to you, yeah, you can spend lots of money, Alexey. But are they saying to focus and be ready for growth? Or is it really about today? And for, Sergey, you've had examples where you've had good months, where you've had big jumps. And how do you plan to be really lean, really ready for now? Perhaps losing even experience in your teams or expertise in your teams as you've become really lean. And how can you be flexible and ready for growth? So it's really, a little bit on the subject we've discussed there about, can you be green? Can you be flexible? But at this moment in time, how can you do that when business is so tough? And what are your orders from above? Is it be lean, just keep costs down for now, or is it be ready for growth? So maybe for you, Alexey, first.
Спасибо за вопрос. Но на самом деле...
Thank you, Louis, for your question. In fact, each company, each car manufacturer has practically the same tasks. And on the whole, I can't say that it is to do with the flexibility of approaches or the situation in which you come to the company. The question is that when there is such a sad situation on the market, you have to look at the main costly components of your work that are not cost effective. And the company has to change in the specific period of time in order to adapt itself to this crisis situation. The question is how to master those ineffective processes for the company to become more effective. What's to be done for this? You have to look afresh at the and analyze once again whether the processes that have been good for quite a while are still as good. Maybe some people will think that everything should be as it were forever, but we have to analyze on a constant basis what is going wrong at any specific point of time and then focus on these things going wrong and try to correct them. Why I'm mentioning this? Because this session is aimed more at a vision in terms of how should we act in this situation. And we should act as follows. We have to investigate the weak chains, the weak sides of each process and correct them. For the company, it means to eliminate all ineffectivenesses. It's very difficult to do at the same time. Try to do this step by step. Some processes have to be changed. Some processes may be adapted a little bit, but all this brings to the decrease of costs. We all depend on various factors. The transportation companies lack volumes. Their manufacturers have to decrease costs, and will need to eliminate extra costs. In terms of Avtovaz, the volumes and the processes are really large scale and complicated. So there are lots of aspects that have to be improved on a constant basis, and we always have to improve efficiency. Even if we understand that we have achieved something better, we still have to think whether things may be improved. And I think that any logistics expert has to concentrate on what has or what can be improved or changed. So my task is to analyze all their weaknesses and where the most ineffective processes take place and correct this. This is a comprehensive issue. This has to be applied when working with the suppliers, with the carriers, with the processes, and many other aspects. So, answering your question in terms of flexibility, it should be not flexibility per se, but an approach which means looking for constant improvements.
Alexey said I would just, and I asked partly probably this question when I spoke, I would add that I believe in people, and these are people who let you do your work. You can never call yourself the most clever and the wisest person in the company. There will always be somebody who will come with an idea which will not be yours and which will be brilliant. And in the hard times, it's important to maintain and keep skilled people with you. I think this is the most important thing.
Okay. Anything to add to that, Igor? Again, you're relatively new to your job. Is it purely cost? Are you preparing for growth? What is a supplier's perspective, a part supplier's perspective?
Вы знаете, здесь я, наверное, оригинальным.
I won't say anything new. I can only repeat the thoughts of the colleagues. Or maybe we'll word them differently. We can't impact the currency exchange rate. We can't impact the laws of the Russian Federation. What's left? We can only do what we can do. Sorry for this tautology. And we, as I see it, we have to understand our existing processes, including costs, reasonable or unreasonable actions, and master these processes to such a degree that we can service our customers without flaw. And that's what we are doing, all of us gathered here.
What we need to mention is that we should also try to think beyond our standard functions. Because we should remember that logistics is a link between production, sales, strategical planning function, and a lot of others. And in this role, we see a lot of processes going on in different areas, those not necessarily others see. And sometimes we are the ones who can find opportunities not pure logistics area, but also on the border between us and somebody else or in somebody else's field. And also, when you apply a broader approach, you don't just look narrow into your day-to-day business. You can make better business decisions, because sometimes you can make a business case which is negative in your little area, but is positive when you look at the total company. For example, I had greatest fights with our manufacturing engineering when we launched the production of Ford Transit in Yelabuga. They were looking in their little area, and they were trying to reduce investments into body shop. And they planned to deliver a lot of sub-assemblies from Turkey. Sub-assembly looks like, imagine half a vehicle. And if you don't do a sub-assembly, it's a set of flat parts. Obviously, bringing a set of flat parts is much cheaper than bringing something more curvy, like body side. And by reducing their investments by several $1 million, they increased logistics cost twice. So they were looking in their little area, and they did this decision. If I was the one who makes a decision, and I would look just into logistics, I would probably make a decision to bring all the flat parts. But then investments into body shop would go through the roof. So all of us need to think wider than our day-to-day operational business.
It's a very good point. I wanted to ask the panel a little bit about their approach to logistics outsourcing. So in terms of what areas you might already be outsourcing or considering outsourcing that you don't now? So perhaps working with more of a LLP scenario as Ford does in other parts of the world, or in plant logistics or networking. I mean, at Avtovaz, I can imagine this is somewhat different because Avtovaz has traditionally perhaps done a little more in-house, given its scale and size. Have you changed, or are you looking to change anything in the context of the market that we have now? Maybe we could start with Sergey.
We go both ways. We don't have a strategy to insource everything or outsource everything. And we have, in the beginning of 2015, we made a direct contract with MSC for sea transportation, which is basically the littlest number of providers in the chain between us and the owner of the vessel. We have insourced some operations for outbound logistics and warehouse operations in St. Petersburg. But at the same time, we also outsourced in Tatarstan something related to outbound. So we are ready to elect any solution if that it's more effective than the other one.
Я, наверное, добавлю.
I can add a few words or comments. Avtovaz has two approaches, both outsourcing and insourcing. And certainly the choice is made on the basis of two principles: efficiency and cost. For example, we have the internal service in the company that carries out in-house transportation and deliveries. And the efficiency and costs are managed more effectively compared to the outsourcing alternatives. As for outsourcing, I think understand mainly how effective this outsourcing is, because there are many service providers that are ready to outsource any operations, any scope, any processes. But one has to admit that in many cases, the companies lack knowledge or expertise in many areas, because it depends on what is the approach of the company. If we outsource things and the company tries to support the current process, this is one pair of shoes. If we outsource to the company that has an aim to constantly improve process, decrease the costs, speed up processes, make them more effective, and goes outside the standard vision, then it's really worthwhile. But the choice between the outsourcing or insourcing on the basis of two principles: costs and efficiency. If cost efficiency and stability may be achieved, and it is easier to achieve them in your own company, then no way to outsource. But there are some other companies that prefer to outsource. They think that it means less problems, fewer problems, and fewer complications for their in-house operations. And sometimes this is really so, because some companies have more opportunities, because they are working within the logistics providers field for lots of resources. But everything descends on the planning, on how well prepared the process is. And I really call all the companies, not only manufacturers, but the service providers as well, to be professional. Our market is growing on a yearly basis. Before, at our previous meetings, we discussed tariffs mainly. Let's change the contract, let's change the price. Now the situation is different. Now it depends on who is working more effectively and better, not cheaper or more expensive. So the strategy for any manufacturer is based on the stability and long-term sustainable basis. If the company is working stably, you can carry on. But if the company is not stable, there's no constant information exchange, then there is a question, should you outsource at all or not? Maybe easier to organize something yourselves in-house and not depend on the external capacities. But this is a very complicated issue, and it very much depends on the specific situation. We have it very easy and simple. Customs clearance, transportation and warehouse are outsourced. While in theory, this solution depends on three things. First, what we are talking about, because the requirements to customs documentation one to warehouse are absolutely different, and absolutely different to the transportation. So what can we outsource and to whom? It depends on the specialization of the company, whether the products of the company are very simple or they need some special knowledge and only the company operate with them. And the size of the company matters as well. What a big company can afford and what a small company can afford. That's it.
Chance to ask a question as well. We have a good panel here, so if anyone wants to make a comment or to ask a question. Otherwise, we will end up asking you questions like Igor did earlier.
Я не знаю, у меня, наверное, будет вопрос, Луи.
I probably have a question. Today's conference and today's session are dedicated to the question, how to live further. So it envisages planning for the next year. What I understand that many things may happen in the course of this year, but while we're still here in the same room and with the same familiar faces, and after we discussed a lot of questions, let's ask what topics may be of interest for the next year's conference and what topics people would like to discuss next year. I don't think it's worthwhile to discuss how difficult it is for us to work and how do we have to carry on with our work in the future once again next year. Maybe something different. What's to be changed in logistics, in the approaches? Maybe carry out some workshops. Because once again, it's not an easy time for logistics and for the service providers now. We need some innovations, we need some initiatives. And I can't say that we have enough of them right now.
The points that you make there are very good points, and I'm not moving away from this discussion, but it's just a reminder that you have the evaluation forms in front of you, and we will be collecting them at the end of the session. So while you're here, make sure you complete the evaluation forms. And if there's any ideas for sessions for 2017, then please let us know. And any other comments you have on the conference, what we can do differently, improve, change, and so on. We're happy to hear that. But I do think that's a very good question that you raised, and the way I would like to cheat a little bit is I will pick on maybe one or two tables and see maybe the middle table there. So just I want someone from that table, one or two people from that table, to give us a suggestion on one topic that we should cover for 2017, and perhaps a little bit why. So who's going to be the brave one there?
Okay, you want?
Yes, no, about 2017. So for my profession, I'm outbound analyst, and I'm working in engineering logistics in Renault Nissan, and I would like to discuss more our export opportunities. So, for example, we discussed today our opportunities considering our legislation, law projects, and I think that the next year we'll have more and more opportunities in other countries. So this is what I prefer to discuss more.
Okay.
Yes.
No, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask also?
Yes, of course.
Propose. Okay, if we look back for certain years ago, so when foreign OEM came to Russia. In the beginning, the parts were still supplying from abroad. So the parts producers were still located abroad. Then it was obvious that parts production moved following the OEM to the cities and countries where OEM located in. Okay. Then it moved even further. Some suppliers moved on site of OEM. Okay. So therefore, I'm just thinking. So what can be further step between parts suppliers and OEMs?
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your points. Kind of a little bit on that point, in tough times, perhaps it's, one of the things that's a solution that's in good times, in tough times, because whatever happens, logistics is always a headache. When business is good, we need more capacity. When business is bad, we need some new ideas. And the constant topic that is collaboration. Are you at this moment in time doing enough collaboration or any even collaboration between different car makers perhaps in particular to find ideas to make sure that you maximize the opportunity, encourage or have better collaboration with your part suppliers or your logistics companies? So the question to perhaps the two car makers initially, are you collaborating? And if so, are you collaborating enough? And if not, why not?
Directly, almost no. We have some connection through service providers, but there is very little direct dialogue between different car makers, and mostly these are personal contacts, because a lot of people know each other and they talk to each other. Mm-hmm. But officially, there are no many contacts. Those are related to sharing ideas and knowledge to be more efficient.
Should there be more? I mean, you said there isn't much collaboration. Should there be more?
Do new ideas and important know-hows appear frequently?
С своей стороны, я, наверное, сказал, что...
I would like to add, we've already discussed it today, and I do believe that one of the major problems today is that it is very difficult for us to forecast the future, because again, all of us and all of our businesses are tied to future volumes, so future sales volumes, and sales volumes are tied to production, production is tied to inventories, inventories are tied to logistics, and so on and so forth. That we are trying to establish and have a good dialogue between companies, but I do believe that one of the key problems for us is that we have to improve the accuracy of our forecasting. And of course, it is very difficult to have 100% accuracy, but we do understand that the more accurate and detailed our plans are, the better the companies can prepare. They can prepare their capacities, their production, prepare their staff, work on their quality, and establish more efficient processes. But the real life is quite different. We can plan away, but reality gives us a surprise from time to time. Sometimes we do have these situations when we miss, so how do we tackle it? I believe that my company is trying to achieve very good cooperation between all participants. It is vitally important at this point in time to have great exchange of information. We shouldn't bemoan the difficult situation on the market, but we should get ready. And so to be ready, we have to have access to information, and we have to work on that, I believe.
Best forecasters where for sure England will stay in Europe. That was the forecast last Wednesday, the day before we were voted out of Europe, and also win the football. And we were a little bit wrong on that one as well. So,
So the forecast accuracy 5%.
yeah, I think even less.
Two of the points that were raised to discuss next year, and I agree with both of the points, one on exports and one on supplier localization integration, but there are 2 points we can raise a little bit here.
Yeah.
And perhaps on the export side, it's probably most or only appropriate really to ask Alexey a little bit, because Avtovaz would certainly be the Russian car maker or the car maker in Russia with the most experience with exports, and probably perhaps with the most ambitions right now. What would you describe, how would you describe logistics for exports from Russia right now? Is it sort of hindering the process or the potential? Is it not really the issue? You know, what would your comment be in terms of the logistics improvements or developments that you'd need to see for Avtovaz or indeed for Russia to see its exports grow?
Для АвтоВАЗа
For Automotive, again, this is, as you said, the export issue is not a new issue for us, and I do believe that I cannot, of course, go into full detail here and share all the information, but when it comes to logistics and whether we are ready for export, I have to say that Automotive has a lot of things in place. We have developed all of the processes, but of course we have to adjust to changing volumes, and the company is trying to increase export volumes to different regions. And as I said, this is something that we have to prepare for. Of course, there are always challenges, but again, nothing will work out if we are not ready for it. So we have a strategy of the company, and we are getting ready. And I have to say, in time, we will have developed the logistics that we will need to sustain these volumes. We already have several projects in the pipeline. They're quite complex. From the logistical point of view, they require a lot of work, both corporate work and work outside the company. But again, as I said, it all comes down to preparation and trying to address the problem beforehand. We also talk a lot about local content and export, and like any healthy company, we are trying to increase our indicators here. Again, I cannot give you all of the information today, but in the situation that we have in Russia, I would say export is one of the best and most promising solution, especially because Automotive manufactured a new car line, and other countries have expressed interest in our new products. So again, we're going to increase that, but logistics, well, has to get ready, and that's what we're working on. So let me answer in Russian, just as a change. When it comes to international foreign OEMs, I think that Russia has a good future as a manufacturer or as a production site for foreign OEMs. If Russia integrates into the global automotive manufacturing and sales system, if Russia stops being a national manufacturer and a national seller of cars, I think in that case, we can manufacture global products and we can export these products. There are all of the prerequisites, economic requisites for that. But whether it will happen fast or not, that depends on the policy or on the politics, what sort of decisions will be taken inside of Russia, outside of Russia, what sort of decisions regarding tariffs, WTO tariffs, and other ways to regulate import and export. But again, this is a road that was previously traveled by other countries who are not traditional manufacturers, and we also have a chance to travel down that road for ourselves.
More on the localization, which Alexey raised. In fact, that's important to competitiveness for exports, as it were. And maybe we can start with Igor here. I mean, you mentioned right at the beginning that I think you're mainly importing products, or maybe that was your question. But can you talk a little bit about your localization here in Russia and what the target or would be? Because I think from a tier supplier point of view, and we heard a little bit about this morning, there's somewhat less support perhaps from the government. It's perhaps more difficult, especially lower down the tier supply chain. So maybe you can give us a little bit of perspective on localization here.
I have to say that my experience here is probably won't be useful for the majority of people present here. So WABCO is a manufacturer of automotive components. Localization is only feasible for us from one point of view, and taking into account political situation in the country. There are a lot of requirements from the manufacturers of cars, tractors, tanks, and these requirements come down so that we supply them Russian-made goods or goods assembled in Russia. So this is not an issue of the economy. This is a political issue or an issue of policy, and I do believe that these requirements will stay, and I do believe that basically the local content or the volumes of local content will grow up. Just to comment again, thinking about conferences that we had in the past, we did have presentations on technological parks, on industrial zones, and so on and so forth. So it's interesting for me to see whether these sort of things, these sort of instruments are being used. Because, you know, any techno parks, there were even presentations on, you know, increasing local content, on improving localization. So is this something that is still being followed through? I don't know who can answer this question, but probably representatives of techno parks. Well, since they're here, that probably gives us an indirect. Yeah, we do need localization, and it is probably one of the most efficient ways from the point of view of the logistics, but it all comes down to the companies, whether they're ready to localize, whether they have a production base for localization, the quality of their products, and so on and so forth. I would like to understand this issue in more detail, but in order to localize production of components, we have to have quite a large production volume, and to have a huge volume of production, it has to be cost efficient. And in order to have cost efficiency, we need to have localization. So in order to have localization, we have to have localization. And since we do not have localization, we do not have localization. So say if oil price goes up very sharply, we'll start buying a lot of cars even without localization. Then localization will appear because the volumes will appear. But since we have no volumes, I think localization is only possible with incentives from the government, with targeted government programs. Otherwise, I see no prospects in the near future.
That's a good place to conclude the discussion. And I'm trying to remember the last point, that there is no localization because there is no localization, but there will be localization if there is localization, or something like that.
Exactly.
So firstly, I'd like to thank the panel for a very interesting and honest discussion. Thank you very much. So firstly, before I conclude the whole conference, just a reminder about the evaluation forms. We're collecting them now. If you completed them, put your hands in the air or turn them into an aeroplane and throw them at me, or continue completing them because they are very important to us. There is a drawer at the end. We'll collect the evaluation forms and make a draw from them, and the prize would be a box of the Queen's biscuits, the Queen of England, not of Europe because we're not part of Europe anymore, but and on that kind of, you know, maybe sort of on the evaluation forms, I wanted to, and looking at possible subjects for next year, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. And just to keep it simple, just by raising your hands, there are questions that are concerning us, and why not ask the people directly? One of the issues we have next year is that in the summer, this kind of time of the year will be the Confederation Cup that England will win. So, and you know how good our forecasts are. So I just wanted to ask, one of the considerations is for next year only, to move the conference to the first week of July. Perhaps just by a simple raising of your hands, if we move the conference to the 5th, 6th, 7th of July, would that have a big, would you say it would have, maybe, I don't know which way to put it. If you think it will have a negative impact, then please raise your hands. So we're considering moving the conference to the first week of July, 5th, 6th, 7th. If you think it will have a negative impact, raise your hands. So no, so thank you very much. That's just one issue out of the way. A second question is perhaps to expand the conference a little bit more to make sure we get more participation and understanding of the CIS countries. Again, by raising of hands, do you think that's a good idea to get more participation and involvement and coverage of not just Russia itself, but the CIS countries? If you think it's a good idea, if you can raise your hands. Okay, so that's something we should consider. And then maybe the final question, if you actually do think that England will win the Confederation Cup and then the World Cup, please raise your hands. Is the microphone working? Maybe you can't hear me. Otherwise, I'm sure everybody would have put their hands up. So really just we'll collect the evaluation forms now. We'll collect them. I just wanted to discuss a little bit the last couple of days. I think we've tried to cover, in one day the important topics. We looked at, tried to cover a little bit of localization, a little bit of import or export in particular, because those are some of the opportunities coming up. And what you can do, I guess, we tried to make it a little bit more positive, to survive and prosper. I suppose the realistic maybe this year was too much on surviving a little bit. And it's understandable. We have to face facts. We can't live in a dream world. But hopefully next year we can be a little bit more positive. Hopefully we'll have better news. And as we saw in the UK, economics, politics, things can change overnight. So let's hope that when we're back in 2017, that there is a more positive atmosphere. I'd also like to congratulate everybody here that it is a tough time in Russia. It's a tough time for automotive. It's a tough time for automotive logistics. But we really appreciate your support. We've made our commitment as automotive logistics that we're staying in Russia. We will be holding conferences in Russia, even in the tough times. I'm not going to sit here crying, but it's a tough time for us as well. But we are committed to the automotive logistics industry in Russia, and we're happy to see how many companies have stayed and supported us here. Perhaps an example of this is the sponsors who you see listed here, from our global sponsors who called the global sponsors because they sponsor our conferences around the world. So Jeffco, CTM Law, CHEP, and Changju Logistics, who's our first Chinese global sponsor, and Wallenius Wilhelmsen Logistics, who were our first ever global sponsors, and our silver sponsors, who are probably more specifically for this conference in RTL, Finnlines, Adam Pol, Vectura, TM, and TMBC. So thank you for your support, and I think it's great that they're still pushing themselves forward and being positive. So if you haven't visited their stands, if you see their websites, you will find more information on them. And bear in mind that when times were tough, they were still pushing themselves forward in automotive logistics Russia. I don't know if we have the draw here, so we can choose. Okay, I suppose one of the tough things was choosing the name of a Russian person in Russia, but I would try my best, and bearing in mind that my name's Louis Yakumi, so I know what it's like having tough names. Lev Pitsilevich from Renault Nissan. So if you can come and, good. See, that's what happens if you have a good idea for next year. So please collect your... Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lev. We hope you enjoyed the conference, and if we're talking about export, perhaps you might want to join us at one of our other conferences. The next conference from this is in Baltimore in the USA, an import-export conference on finished vehicle logistics. After that is our global conference in Detroit. After that is Automotive Logistics UK, our first conference in the UK, and it's separate from the conference in Europe, which many of you have visited in the past, probably because we knew in advance what was going to happen. So October is Automotive Logistics UK. After the UK is, that's October. November is Automotive Logistics India in Delhi. December is Automotive Logistics South America in Sao Paulo in Brazil. January is Automotive Logistics Mexico. March is Automotive Logistics Europe that many of you have visited in Germany. April is Automotive Logistics China, of which the Silk Road and linking Russia, or going through Russia, and the rail service that's linking Europe is always a big topic. May is Automotive Logistics Supply Chain, which is looking at parts and service parts, which will be in Atlanta in the USA. And then beginning of June is Finished Vehicle Logistics North America, a conference that focuses specifically on finished vehicle logistics. And then July 2017, I hope we'll see all of you and many, many more as we celebrate the success of the Russian automotive industry in the next 12 months back here in Moscow for Automotive Logistics Russia. But thank you very much for your support today. Thank you very much to the contribution in the discussions. Thank you to all the speakers and panel members. And I hope we can continue to have a great discussion, more networking, more business, and some fun tonight as well at our evening dinner. So the buses, the coaches, I think, are outside. So I hope you enjoyed the day, and I hope you enjoy the evening even more. So thank you very much, everybody.